last week, or what is it? Wednesday? I guess, yeah, it was last week. We talked about factoring special cases, and you had difference of perfect squares. That's when you had two terms, and they were both perfect squares with a minus sign in the middle. Or we had what was called factoring a perfect square trinomial, where the first and last terms were perfect squares, but the middle term was double of what those are. Today we're going to talk about factoring the sum or difference of cubes. All right, a cube is a number or letter times itself 3 times that gives you that value. You guys need to memorize these patterns. All right, we're going to go over a couple, but you need to memorize these patterns. Now, Mr. Saldana uses this acronym down here, and it actually helps a lot. When you have a cube, it's when the first and the last terms of a binomial are perfect cubes. You use the rule above, which is a cubed plus b cubed or a cubed minus b cubed. The result will always be a binomial, so one parenthesis with 2 terms, and then the second will be a parenthesis with 3 terms. But in order to remember the signs, you can use the acronym SOAP. Now, if you guys look, if you have 2 cubes that are being added together, your first parenthesis has a plus sign because this one starts with a plus sign. But this is a different sign. The last one will always be positive because you're squaring a number, but that's where this can get a little confusing. Look here on the minus. The first parenthesis has a minus, but then the second sign is opposite. So if you use the SOAP method, what that means is the first binomial has the same sign. Then inside the binomial, it's opposite. And then the last term is always positive. So I'm going to use that as we go through this. If I were you, I would take a picture of those 2 patterns and put it on the next slide so you can keep referring to it. But cubes are actually quite easy as long as you know the pattern. So let's look at some examples. We only have a few and then we're done for the day. All right, so you have 2 terms here. What is the first thing we absolutely always look for when you have a factoring problem? GCF. There's no GCF here. So 2 terms. There's only 2 possibilities. It's either the difference of squares or the sum and difference of cubes. Is x cubed or 125 a perfect square? No. It's a perfect cube. What times what times what gives you x to the 3rd power? X. What times what gives you 125? 5. Once you identify what the 2 numbers are, you just throw it in the pattern. So since there is a minus sign, guys, what does my first binomial look like? X minus 5. Perfect. And then in the pattern, you square the first term. So how would I square this first term? X squared. And then if you use SOAP, think about it. S-O-A-P. So the first sign is the same. What's the second sign? Opposite. What's the opposite of minus? Plus. All right. How do you get that middle term? You stick the 2 together. So what's x times 5? 5x. And then the last term, you square it. And it's always positive because anytime you square a number, it's always positive. So what's 5 times 5? 25. And then that's it. As long as you know the pattern, you're fine. Yes? Why is it 5x? You take the first times the second and just stick it together in the middle. That's what the pattern is.
So if it was like 2 and 5, it would be like 10?
Perfect, yep. Let's look at 14. First of all, is there a GCF? No. Okay. So is this the difference of perfect squares? No, because it's not the difference. There's no minus sign. So this only possibility of this is cubes. What times what times what gives you y cubed? Y. What times what gives you 8? 2. All right. So now you have everything you need. My first parenthesis is going to have the same sign as the original problem. So what does my first parenthesis look like? Y what? What's the sign in the middle there? Okay, so y plus 2. There's second parenthesis. You start off with squaring the first term. So when I square the first term, what does it become? Y squared, all right? The sign is opposite. If I think SOAP, same opposite, then always positive. So what's the opposite of plus? Minus. We get that middle term by just sticking these 2 together. What's 2 times y? How do I write it? 2y. And then plus, because we're always positive at the end, I have to square this one. What is 2 squared? 4. Yep.
Why is it Y2?
To get the middle term, the pattern is this. A plus B, and then it's A squared minus AB plus B squared. So this is my A term, and this is my B term. So you square the first term, take y squared, then you stick these two together. That's where the 2y came from, and then you square the last term. The other pattern is A minus B. So you square the first term, opposite sign, stick A and B together, and then multiply. All right, so let's look at this one. GCF? Nope, there's no GCF. So this is, again, perfect cubes. You want to say A and B, that's fine. So A and B. What is your A term? What times what gives you x cubed? X. What times what gives you 27? 3, okay. So your first parenthesis, think about the pattern. Your first parenthesis is the same sign as the original problem. So what does your first parenthesis say? X minus 3, good. Now your second parenthesis, you square the first term. What's my A term? X, so I square X. What sign comes next? Plus, it's the opposite, good. How do I figure out what AB is? You multiply. How do I multiply 3 and X? How do I write it? 3X, great. And then I square the last term. 9, that's it. You always square the first term, square the last term, take the A and the B and stick them together to get the middle. So in a case like this, is there a GCF? No. Is 64 a perfect cube? Yeah. What times what gives you 64? 4. What times what gives you x cubed? X, good. And then my B term, what times what gives me 1? 1. So look at the sign in the middle. What does your first parenthesis say? 4x plus 1, great. All right, this is a little tricky, this next part. We just got to remember our exponent rules from when we first started. I have to square my first term. So if I take 4x and I square it, what does that become? 16x squared. Good. Remember, the exponent goes to the number and to the letter. Good job. So what's my sign? Since my original was a plus, what's my sign here? Minus. Good. How do I get that middle term? What do I do with my A and my B? I multiply. What's 4x times 1? 4x. Good. And then we square the last term. What's 1 squared? 1. Perfect. Good job.
If it's cubed, wouldn't it be 4 times 4 times 4, not 16?
Well, we got our 4 here, right? And then we have to square in the pattern, you have to square the first term. No, you're fine. Good question. All right, 17, GCF. Guys, GCF. I like that you're saying 4 because you see a cube, but do they have a 4 in common? No. Okay, so this is just going to be a difference of cubes. So your A term, Nick just said, what times what gives me 64? 4. What times what gives me x cubed? X, good. And then my B term, what times what gives me 27? 3. Now I know everything I need to know for my pattern. My first parenthesis is going to have the same sign as your original problem. So what does it say? 4x minus 3. Great. Now I have to square the A term. If I take this A term and square it, what does that become? 16x squared. Good. Now I'm just going to take my A and my B and multiply them together. So what's 4x times 3? Plus 12x. Why'd you put a plus there? Because it's the opposite. Good. And then we have to square the last term. What is 3 times 3? 9. Perfect. Good job. All right, we have the sum of cubes here. Is there a GCF? No. So what number times itself 3 times gives me 125? 5. Great. What letter times itself 3 times gives me y cubed? Y. And what number times itself 3 times gives me 1? Perfect. So again, my first parenthesis has the sign from the original problem. What is it? 5y plus 1. So now I'm going to square my first term. Guys, if I square 5y, what does that become? 25y squared. Good. You have to make sure you distribute. So 25y squared. 25y squared. How do I get my middle term? What do I do with a and b? I just stick them together, and it's going to be the opposite. Good. So 5y, and then I'm going to square the last term. What's 1 squared? 1. Perfect. Let's do 20, and then I'll go back to 19. GCF? I see what you're saying. Hang on one sec. But is there a GCF here, guys? No. So my a term. What times what gives me 8x cubed? 2x and 2x. Great. What times what gives me 27y cubed? 3y. Now you have everything you need. My first parenthesis is going to have the original sign in it. So what's my first parenthesis? 2x plus 3y. Okay, great. So now I'm going to take 2x and I'm going to square it. What is 2x squared? It is 4x squared. Good. So 4x squared. How do I get that middle term, and what's my next sign? I'm going to multiply 2x times 3y. What's the sign going to be right here? Minus. Good. So what's 2x times 3y? 6xy. Great. And then it's always a plus at the end. And then when I square 3y, what does that become? 9y squared. Remember, the 2 goes to the 3 and to the y. Very good. All right, guys, the way that this is written, just like it is this a perfect cube? No, 3 is not a perfect cube. Neither is 192. What do we always have to look for first? GCF. Some of you guys are like, well, I don't know if 3 goes into 192. Add up the digits in 192. What's 1 plus 9? 10 plus 2. 12. Does 3 go into 12? Yes, then 3 will go into 192. So divide out the 3. You have your 3 out in front. Over here, do 192 divided by 3. This goes in 6, 18, 1, 2, 64. So you're left with x cubed minus 64. You guys will see, you see the same numbers over and over again. Because when you cube a number, it gets really big really fast, so you're not going to have ginormous numbers. So that 3 that we took out does not leave us. It's staying with us. We're just going to carry it down in the problem. What times what, y'all, gives me x cubed? X. What times what gives me 64? 4. So now you have everything you need. Your first parenthesis is going to have the original sign. So what does my first parenthesis say? X minus 4. Good. Now your second parenthesis, you square the first term, which is x squared. Good. My next sign is opposite. What's the opposite of minus? Plus. Good. How do I figure out what that AB term is in the middle? Multiply. I just stick them together. 4x. And then the last one's always positive, and you square the last term. What is 4 squared? 16. That's it. That is it for perfect cubes, guys. So your homework practice. Write down the pattern. Take a picture of it, stick it on there, and just follow the pattern every time. Remember, if there's a coefficient in front of a number, you need to distribute the exponent to the number and to the variable. Sound good? Okay.